Right, so good evening, guys. The idea is today we're looking at a foundation. We're looking at 1F, which is the November 2018 paper, and we're going to work through it. And it's the non-calculator paper, and I'm going to go pretty quickly through the first few questions, but as we come to the trickier ones, we'll go a little bit slower. So let's see where we are. We've got write the following numbers in order of size, starting with the smallest. So here you've got to remember you've got your hundreds, tens, units, and then you've got tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So essentially, you're looking for the number that's the biggest. The first number that's the biggest will be your highest number. And so if we have a look at that, I always think it's easier to go from bigger to smaller. So 0.4 is my biggest because 4 is the biggest number there. Then 0.37, and I'm writing it backwards because they want us to start with the smallest. And then 0.2. And then 0.152 and 0.02. So it's the first one after the decimal place that you want to be the biggest. Now we've got right 0.6 as a percentage. Percentage kind of looks like 100. You know, you've got a sign like that, which is really just, if you have a decimal, you're just timesing it by 100, which means you're moving it 2. So 1, 2. So that's going to give you 60%. Okay. So now we've got a list of numbers. And from the list, we want to write something that's a factor of 10. Factor means that 10 is inside its times table. So we're saying what is inside its times table. So 5 would be our factor of 10. Don't forget to write it here. The instinct might be just to circle it. I've got this, it's easy. Then we've got write 7829 to the nearest 1,000. So we're saying, okay, what have we got here? We've got 7,829. So we're saying, is it nearer to 7,000 or is it nearer to 8,000? Well, hopefully you can see it's above 7,500. So it must be nearer to 8,000. Okay, so scroll up. Right, we've got work out 2 times 5 plus 7. Now, if you remember your BODMAS, BIDMAS, however you've learned it, you've got brackets. Well, we don't have brackets. We don't have indices. And division, no division, then multiplication. So we do the multiplication first. So 3 times 5 gives us 15. And then to that 15, we're adding 7. So we've got 22. 2 cubed, work out 2 cubed. So this means 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. So you're just doubling. Double 4 gives you 8. Okay, now we've got some brackets. And we want to write brackets to make it correct. So let's think about it. If we did 7 times 2 first, we'd get 14. Plus 3 doesn't give us 35. Right, so we'll move along the next 2. Say we put brackets round the next 2 numbers. That's very dodgy brackets. But we'd have 2 plus 5. Remember, we do brackets first. So that would be 5, and we get 7 times 5, which is 35, which works. So we know we've done that correct. Okay, question 6. So you've got Sue has 2 cats. Each cat eats a quarter of a tin of cat food each day. Sue buys 8 tins of cat food. Okay. So if I think about this, as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, okay, she's got 2 cats and each cat eats a quarter. So that means in one day, she uses half a tin. Because if you've got 1 quarter eaten by one cat, a quarter eaten by the other cat, she's using half a tin every day. Right. She buys 8 tins of cat food. Has she bought enough for 14 days? So you're like, well, if half a tin she needs every day, every 2 days she needs 1 tin will be for 2 days. So that means 8 tins will equal 8 times 2, so 16 days. And so you'd say, yes, she does have enough. You have to say the yes to get the mark, even though it's so obvious. Okay, next. Right, there are only apples, cherry trees, pear trees, and plum trees. Oh, fair enough. The pictogram shows information about apple trees, cherry trees, and pear trees. And it tells us the box represents 4 trees. Okay, so we'll go, all right, so this is going to be 4, that's 4, that's 4, that's 4, that's 4. Okay, if we notice this box here is like a quarter of the box, so that's 1. And this one is 2. So let's see, we've got 12 here, 5 here, so 4 plus 1, 4 plus 2, 6 here. We know there's a total of 30 trees. So how many plum trees must there be? So we go, okay, 12 plus 5 plus 6. How many more do we need to get to 30? So we get to 23. So we need 7 more. I know that one box is 4, and I need 5, 6, 7. So I need 3. So a half and then a little square like that. And that would be completing the pictogram. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need a ruler. As long as it's clear what you've done, you should be absolutely fine. As long as, you know, it doesn't look double the size. Right, question 8. Right. Write down the coordinates of A. So remember, for coordinates, it's the X followed by the Y. So if we have a look, on the x-axis, to get to the A, we've got minus 2x and minus 1 on the y. So we write minus 2, minus 1. So you write the x and the y, you just go up from it and you see where you get to. Okay, and then it says on the grid, you might not be able to see this clearly because I have not scrolled. Actually, let's scroll up. It says on the grid, mark with a cross 2, 3. So remember, the 2 represents the x. So we go 2 and 3. And when we cross it, we get a crossover here. So if you can't see that, let's do that again. That's 2, 3. And we want to label that point B. Now, don't lose marks because you didn't read the question where it said label it B. Now, part C, which you can't see that clearly just yet, it says draw the line for x equals minus 4. So it's a line. So your clue is the fact you want a total line. So you're going to get x equals minus 4, and you're drawing a line the whole way down. So the whole thing represents. So if I choose any single point on that line, x will always be minus 4. Right. Okay. So we've got g equals 9 and h equals 4. And we want to work out the value of 2g plus 3h. Now remember, 2g means, so this means 2 times g. And this means 3 times h. So remember, from BODMAS, we do the multiplication first. If g is 9, 2 times g is 18, plus 3 times h, which is 3 times 4, is 12. 8 plus 2 is 10. 1 plus 1 is, so 10 plus 10 gives you 20, plus the 10 to give you 30. Right. Write down 2 prime numbers that have a sum of 32. Now, you should really know your first few prime numbers, but it's okay. You can kind of think them through if you don't. So let's think of our prime numbers. We've got 2, 3, and then we'll go, okay, so 2 is my only even prime number. So I know 2 plus 30 would give me 32. That doesn't make sense. So let's go the next one, 3. 3 plus what gives me 32. Well, 3 and 29. And you go, does that work? Yes, it does. Okay, perfect. I've got two prime numbers that have a sum of 32. You could also have had 13 and 19. I mean, but this is just a logical way to go through and find it. Take the smallest one and see what you would add to it. Right, question 11. Fractions. I know everyone loves fractions. So we want to find the one that's, and be careful here, there's a reason they bolded it, not, okay, equivalent to 3/4. So all you're saying to yourself is, how do I go from 3 to 9? So I know that in order to go from 3 to 9, I times by 3. 4 times 3 gives me 12, so it's not that one. 3 to 6, 3 times 2. 4 times 2 gives me 8, that's fine. 3 to 18 is the same as 3 to 18 is times 6. 4 times 6 gives me 24, so that works. Now here, 3 doesn't go into 10 exactly, so it's like, let's have a look at the bottom. 4 times 4 gives me 16. 3 times 4 doesn't give me 10. So the one that doesn't work is clearly 10/16. Right, so this is the one that doesn't work. So it's the one that's not equivalent. It's very easy to read that question and say, which one's equivalent? Do the first one and go, oh, that's definitely right, and fill it in. 1/12 plus 5/6. Okay, so we notice, right, so normally we could like butterfly it, but because 6 and 12 go into each other, so we know that 6 times 2 gives you 12. That means we can write 5/6 in an equivalent fraction as something over 12. So we times 2 on the bottom. So that means we times 2 on the top and we get 10. So we've got 1/12 plus 10/12 to give us 11/12. Okay. Right, question 12. Right. Tom uses his lorry to deliver bricks. Okay, so we're saying if he travels a certain distance, which is my x-axis, there is an amount that he charges. So there's his delivery cost. And we want to know what the fixed cost is. So think about something logical for yourself, like, I don't know, your phone might have a fixed contract. And then if you go over a certain amount, you pay more. So it doesn't matter whether you use it for, whether you travel 0 miles or 100 miles, the number that's on your axes here must be your fixed cost, because it's saying, even if I go 0, I have got a fixed charge of £10. Can you see? Because it's halfway between 0 and 20. Then it says Tom makes 2 deliveries of bricks. The distance of one delivery is 20 miles more than the other delivery. So let's take one delivery, okay? And it doesn't matter where you choose, but it's easier to choose an exact point. So let's say one delivery is here. I'm going to choose here at 20. The next delivery is 20 miles more. So that's going to be over here at 40. So I'm like, where does that take me? It takes me, and I always want to get a nice triangle. So I've got 20 here. And then I say, what's the difference in my delivery cost? So we're going 4. So 40 to 60, that's 20. And then we've got 10 more. So that's 30. So if I wanted the difference between the two delivery costs, it just wants the difference. Difference is £30. So if I went 20 miles, I would pay £40. Whereas if I went 40 miles, I'd pay 60, 40, 70, yeah, it's 70. I'd pay 70, so therefore the difference is 30. And the question asks for the difference. So be really careful about what it's asking for. Right. Ratios, everyone's funnest thing. You've got Asmal, Ryan, and Kim, and they each play a game. Asmal's score was 4 times Ryan's score. So let's think it. They made it spell arc for some reason. So we've got Asmal, Ryan, and Kim. Asmal's score was 4 times Ryan's score, and Kim's score was half of Asmal's score. So which is the smallest going to be? It's going to be Ryan. So we're just going to make him 1. You could have made it 10, you could have made it 20. It would all cancel down to exactly the same thing. So his score is 4 times Ryan's. So his must be 4 if Ryan's is 1. And Kim's score is half of Asmal's. So you look at Asmal's is 4, half of that is 2, and you've got your ratios. So you've got 4 to 1 to 2. Right. So now we've got a diagram which shows a quadrilateral, which just means a 4-sided shape, and its sides are extended. We know that AB equals AD. That's what those lines mean. So where you've got those random lines, they're just telling you the sides are the same. And we're also told that it's a kite. Okay. And we want to show that, we want to show that it's a kite. Right, so what do we know about a kite? So with a kite, what we're hoping to show is that this angle here is the same as this angle here. So let's see what we already know. We know this side is 100. We've got 50 and 75. Now what we have here is what we call opposite angles. So this will also be 50. And the way we talk about it is we go B to C to D. So we say BCD equals 50 degrees. And our reason is that opposite angles are equal. Right, we also know that angles on a straight line add up to 180. So we can work out this one here. So this one here will be 180 minus 75, which will give us 105. And so that's going to be ADC. So ADC equals 105. And the reason is you've got angles on a straight line. Angles on a straight line. Add to 180. And then when we've got a 4-sided shape, the angles always add up to 360. So we're going to do 360 minus 100 minus 50 minus 105, and we're going to get 105. So we've got angles in a quad, I can never spell this, lateral, add to 360 degrees. Okay, and so what we're saying is that it's shown that we have a kite. So we've shown we have a kite here because we've got those 2 bits the same. Right, let's look at the next question. So we said Shahid is going to use these instructions to make a fizzy drink. He's going to mix 5 parts of orange juice and 2 parts of lemonade. He thinks that he has 300 milliliters of orange juice and 200 milliliters of lemonade. If he's correct, what is the greatest amount of fizzy drink he can make? So let's think about it. We know 5 parts orange juice. So if he's got 300 milliliters of orange juice, that's like the same as saying the 5 parts. Orange, I can't spell today. Right. Let's do that again. So we've got orange juice. Luckily, as a maths teacher, I don't need to spell. And we know that equals to like 5 bits, if you like, or 5 parts. So that tells us 1 part or 1 bit will be 300 divided by 5. To do that quickly, we know that 30 divided by 5 is 6, and we add the 0. So 1 bit is 60 milliliters. So therefore 2 bits or 2 parts, so 2 bits is going to be 120 milliliters, right? So we know we've definitely got enough of the lemonade to use all the orange juice. So altogether, the greatest amount of drink would be the 300 of orange juice plus the 120 of lemonade, and that gives us 420 milliliters. Now it says they've got 300 milliliters of orange juice, but only 160 of lemonade. Well, it doesn't really change it, does it? Because he's still got that 120. So as long as he's got 120, it doesn't affect it. So you'd say no, he only needs 120 milliliters of lemonade. Right, next question. We've got 2 triangles. The 2 triangles are similar because 8 plus 4 equals 12 and 6 plus 4 equals 12. No. So of course it's not, hopefully you realize, no, he's not right, because you need to multiply. So you multiply by a scale factor, you don't add. So similar triangles means it's the same triangle, or similar, it's rectangle in this case, sorry. It's the same rectangle that's been stretched bigger by some scale factor. So for example, every side would be double or every side will be triple. So you don't ever add, you're always multiplying. Right. So 80 people are asked if they like coffee. So 80 people are asked if they like coffee. 48 of these are women, and 61 out of 48 of these people are women. Okay, so let's fill in that bit of information first. We know 48 are women, and we know 61 of the 80 people like coffee, and 8 of the men do not like coffee. So we can fill those out really easily. So now if we know wherever the branches meet, they have to add up. So this number and this number have to equal 80. So 48 plus something gives you 80. So you could do 80 take away 48, which gives you 32. So that must be 32. And now we know 8 people do not like coffee. So the amount of people that do like coffee, for the amount of men that like coffee, will be 32 minus 8, which is 24. And then we're also told we need some more information. 61 people like coffee. So you're like, okay, so we've already got 24 that like coffee. To make it 61, there needs to be 37. But we know in total there are 48 women. So 48 minus 37 gives us 11. We then have to find the probability. So one of the people who likes coffee is chosen. So we only care about the people who like coffee. So this plus this, right? And we know that's 61 people. So it's out of 61 people. How many of those 61 are women? You've got 37. So 37 out of 61 are women. I hope that makes sense or is clear. So those are quite nice because everything just adds up together whenever you get 2 lines meeting. There was a question similar on last year's or the year before's AQA paper as well. So Food Mart and Jan Stores sells boxes of the same type of breakfast cereal. Each shop has a special offer. Which box of cereal is better value? You must show you're working. Okay, so what we're going to try do is figure out how much you get for £1 or £5, it doesn't really matter. So you've got 400 grams with 20% off the normal price. Okay, so first we've got to work out how much we're paying for 400 grams. So 400 grams and we want to work 20% of £5. So 10% of £5 is dividing it by 10, which would be 0.5, so it would be 50p. So 20% of £5 would be double that, so it would be £1. So that means at Food Mart, 400 grams costs me £4 because I've got £1 off. Right. Now in Jan's store, we get 30% extra. So we're saying 30% extra off the 400. So 10% of 400 gives me 40. Remember, you're dividing by 10. 30% of 400 is therefore timesing that by 3. So 120 grams. So we're getting 120 extra. So at Jan's store, we're getting 520 grams for £5. So I think it's easier to always find out how much you're getting for £1. So here's the easy one. If we've got 400 grams for £4, that means we're getting 100 grams for £1. And here, if I want to work out how many I'm getting for £1, I have to divide 520 by 5. So 520 divided by 5, it goes into 5s once, and it goes into 0. 5s into 20 is 4. So I get 104 grams. So I get more for my pound at Jan's store than I do at Food Mart. Right. So let's have a look at question 19. Right, this is less obvious without some tracing paper, but hopefully you can see you're going to rotate this about 1, 0. So 1, 0 is over here, and you're going to use that as your anchor point. So if I draw lines from 1, 0 through your point and then like sort of stretch it down, just through the corners. And over here too. And what I'm doing is I'm flipping that all the way around. So I'm using that as my anchor point. So that tells me where I've drawn these lines. If I've drawn it properly, you should be able to see that you end up with, so if you've done it with a ruler as opposed to me, you should be able to see you end up with your points being on those lines. So that is your shape rotated all the way around. Do we still have school if there's a lockdown? Oh, sorry. For anybody like listening later on YouTube, as this is a recording, we are due to have the announcement just now from Boris Johnson. And as far as I am aware, the announcement hasn't yet been made. It's 18:52. And the computer tells me Boris Johnson is about to start speaking. And we're just told that COVID is going up. I will keep an eye on it and I will let you know. But I imagine you would still have school because they've been adamant that school is still going to go ahead, regardless of what happens, but we'll see. I will update you. Anyway, moving on. Question 20, we want to get through this paper. Work out so now we're at the crossover questions. So these questions will be in your higher paper as well as your foundation. Right, so we have an indice question. Now, when you've got those things as powers, wherever you see times, you're adding, and wherever something's dividing, you're taking away. So what you're actually doing is you're doing 3, 7, the times means add -2. And then we have to take away whatever's on the bottom. Now we know a plus and a minus together make a minus. So we've got 7 minus 2 to give us 5, minus another 3 to give us 2. So we get 3 squared, which is 9, which is 3 times 3. Okay. So now we've got v squared equals u squared plus 2as. And you've got to work out the value of v. So we're going to start off by plugging in everything we know. So we've got v squared equals 12 squared plus 2 times minus 3 times 18. Okay, so we're going to use our BODMAS rules. We're going to do the indices first. 12 squared is 144. And then we've got 2 times minus 3 times 18. So I would probably do 18 times minus 3 first, because I think that's a bit easier. And I get minus 54. So I get 2 times minus 54. Now, doubling 54, double 50 to give you 100, double 4 to give you 8, put them together. So v squared is 144 minus 108. So we've got 144 take away 108. So you'll get 14 take away 8. So you've got 3 there, and then you've got 13 minus, you've got 6 there, and you've got 13 minus 10, so you've got 3 there. So you get v squared equals 36. So you're saying something times something gives you 36. So v must equal 6. And then we've got to make s the subject of the formula. Right. So we want to rearrange this equation. So what we want to end up with is s equals. So let's try rearrange that. So we want s on its own. So we first identify where our s is. Our s is here. So we just move everything we can away from it. So first we're going to move away the u squared. And that's going to give us 2as. Now we still want the s on its own, so we've got to get rid of that. So 2as means 2 times a times s. So we're going to divide by 2a, and we're left with that. So if I just write it the other way around, doesn't matter which way around you write it, an equal sign, it could go either way. Right, next. I just having a look at an update. Okay, so no major update yet. They're still talking. They're just talking about how the virus is spreading and it's going up. There's a rise in hospital admissions in virtually every group. So far, still no definitive thing on what the lockdown is going to mean. Anyway, a bonus of 2,100 is shared by 10 people who work for a company. 40% of the bonus is shared equally between 3 managers. The rest, okay, so I'm thinking 100% is everything. So if 40% is shared equally, then the rest of it is going to be 60%. Right. If the bonus is shared equally between all 10 people, I will get 25% more. So let's think what's happening at the moment. At the moment, 40% is getting shared equally between 3 managers. So let's work out 40%. 2,100 is your 100%. So 10% is dividing it by 10. So 210. So 40% is going to be that doubled and doubled again. So we're going to get, or actually an easier way to do it is to work out the 60% to figure out what the salesmen are getting. So let's say 50% is going to be half of that. So half of 2,000 is 1,000. Half of 100 is 50. So we get 1,050. So that means 60% is adding those 2 amounts up to give you 1,260. And that 60% is shared by 7 salesmen. Okay, so 1,260 divided by 7. So we get 7s into 1 is 0, 7s into 12 is 1, Got 5, 7s into 56 gives us 8. So that means they get 180 each. If they all got equal amounts, you would divide it by 10. So if equal, you do 2,100 divided by 10. So everyone will get 210 each. Is that 25% more? Let's have a look. What's 50% of 180? So 50% is half, which is 90. 25% is half of the half, so 45. Now the difference between 210 and 180 is not 45, so the salesman is not correct. £30 is not 25% off 180. So that's quite a long question, but it is worth 5 marks, and we are coming towards the end of the paper. So you've got 28 questions in total, so we're on the home stretch. Right, question 20. Right, it would take 20 minutes, 120 minutes, to fill a swimming pool using water from 5 taps. How many minutes will it take if only 3 of the taps are used? Okay, so if it takes 120 minutes, if it's 1 tap, if 5 taps, if it was only 1 tap, that 1 tap would have to work a lot harder. So it'd be 120 times 5. So it would be 600 minutes if it was 1 tap. But 3 taps means you can divide it by 3, and that 600 minutes can be shared by all 3 taps. So you'd have 600 divided by 3 to give you 200 minutes. So you've got 200 minutes. And the assumption I've made is that all taps flow at the same, and the word I'm going to use is rate, because it's kind of what they like. It means the same speed or at the same amount every minute. Okay, so we've got a plane now. I'll go a bit slower on these as we come towards the last 4. So a plane travels at a speed of 213 miles. Now we're told to use an estimate. You see the word estimate, and what you're going to do is always try and make it as simple as possible. So estimate, you're going to say, I'm going to make that 13 into 200. So they're telling us that's 213 miles per hour. So we've got 200 miles in 1 hour. 1 hour is the same as 60 minutes. Right, so I want to work out how much it is for 1 mile. So, and I want it in seconds. So I'm going to go, okay, so 200 miles in 60 minutes. If I half it, I've got 100 miles in 30 minutes. Right? And if I divide it by 10, I've got 10 miles in 3 minutes. I'm just trying to make the numbers as small as possible. Now, 3 minutes is how many seconds? So we've got 3 times 60. 6 times 3 is 18. So that's going to give us, so we've got 10 miles in 3 minutes. And so we want to know what 1 mile is. So we're going to have 180 seconds is 10 miles. So therefore 1 mile is in 18 seconds. So divide both by 10. So just go down in a really logical, easy way to calculate it. Now, is mine an overestimate or an underestimate? So I rounded the distance down. So mine's actually going to be an overestimate because I'm thinking I'm going to be traveling less. That's a bit confusing because sometimes you might think it's the other way. So here, mine's actually going to be an overestimate. And that's because I rounded the distance down. So I've rounded the distance down. So that's what I've got there. All right. So here we've got some simultaneous equations now. These are really easy to do on a calculator paper. In a non-calculator paper, we've got to do a little bit more work for them. So what we're going to do is try and make either the x's or the y's the same. Now, I think it's easier to make the x's the same here because then you don't have to worry about the signs. You can just take them away from each other. So I'm going to call that 1 and I'm going to call that 2. So I'm going to take the second one and multiply it by 5. I'm going to get 5x minus 15y equals 45. 9 times 5 is 45. So I've got to multiply every single thing. And the reason I times it by 5 is I want the x's to match. So now I'm going to rewrite my first one. Plus y equals 21. And I'm going to do a takeaway sum. 5x minus 5x, 0 x's, so they disappear. Minus 15 minus 1. Okay, so we've got minus 15 and then minusing another 1. So think about when you go negative numbers, you're getting even more minus. Right, and then you've got 45 minus 21, which is going to give me 24. So y is going to be 24 divided by minus 16. Now, if you're not sure where you go from here, just start halving it. Half the equation. So if I halve it, I get 12 and minus 8. I could halve it again and I'd get 6 and minus 4. I could halve it again and I've got 3 and 2. I hope you can see that. So we end up with minus 3 over 2. So now we know that y equals minus 3 over 2. We need to find x. So we know that x minus 3y equals 9 if I take the original 2 because it's the easiest one. So x equals 9 plus 3y. So x equals 9 plus 3 times minus 3 over 2. So I get 9 minus 9 over 2. And that's going to be the same as 4.5 essentially, so 9 over 2. So if we wanted to write that, that's the same as 18 over 2 minus 9 over 2 to give you 9 over 2. If you want to deal in fractions. If you're happy with decimals, you could have written that as -1/2 and 4.5. Right, 26. All right, so we've got a diagram that shows a square of ABCD with sides of length 20. So it's a square, so that means both bits are 20, so it's a 20 by 20. And a semicircle and an arc. Okay, so a semicircle is half a circle, and an arc is like a portion of a circle. It's like a slice of pizza. So first we're going to find out the area of the square, because I'm trying to find out the areas compared. So if I say, what's our total area? My total area is 20 times 20. So 20 times 20. So I'm going to do 2 times 2 to give me 4. Put my 2 zeros in, centimeters squared. Then I want to find the area of a semicircle and an arc. Well, first, let's see this bit here, if it was all coloured in, is a quarter of the circle, right, whose radius is 20. So the area of 1/4 of the circle is going to be pi r squared. So pi times 20 squared divided by 4. I don't know if you can see that. I'll scroll it up in a sec. And so we end up with 20 squared, which is 400. 400 over 4 pi, which is 100 pi. So what we've got there, let me clear that actually and scroll it up. I'll rewrite that in. So we had our total area of square, which was 20 times 20 to give us 400. Then we said we had a quarter of a circle with radius 20. Now a circle, the equation for the area of a circle, pi r squared, and we've got a quarter of it. So we've got 100 pi. And then we've got a semicircle, so that's this semicircle over here, and this bit here, which goes right away across, is the diameter. So the radius of it would be 10. So therefore the area of the semicircle is going to be pi times 10 squared over 2, because it's half of it. And so we get 10 squared is 100. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So we get 50 pi. And what we want to have is the shaded bit, which is the quarter circle minus the semicircle to give us 50 pi. So shaded region, 100 pi minus 50 pi to give us 50 pi. And now we're going to put it into this equation. Area of the shaded bit, we said, was 50 pi. Area of everything was 400. So we can cancel those. And then we can come and say that's 1 pi. So we'll just write pi over 8, which is the answer. That was a bit long, but I hope that makes sense. It is 4 marks. It's only 4 marks. I'd have expected it to be a bit more. Okay. Well done for anyone who stayed with me. We're on the final haul. We've got the last 2 questions off this paper anyway. So if we have a look here, we've got Amina has 2 bags. In the first bag, there are 3 red balls and 7 green ones. So how many are they altogether? So there's 3 plus 7, so there's 10. So let's just look at the first bag. We've got 3 out of 10 are red and 7 out of 10 are green. So we can fill that bit over there. In the second one, there's 5 red and 4 green. So we've got 5 plus 4 gives us 9. So what we've got there is, oh, okay, sorry, news on a different matter. There's going to be a stay-at-home order from Thursday. So people in England must stay at home. I don't know what that means in terms of schools and stuff. I'm assuming schools are still on. But as we find out more, I will continue to keep you updated. So that was announced a few minutes ago. Okay, sorry, back to the question. So in the second bag, we've got 9. So red, you're still going to take exams though. Exams will still run regardless, is what they've said. So you've got red, which is 5/9, and the green ones are 4/9. And then we're going to copy that down because we could have taken a green one first and then a red one from the second bag, or a green one from the first bag and a green from the second bag. So we want to work out the probability it's red, red. So let's see, we're going to follow the rows. So red first and then red. Now your rule is along a branch, you always multiply. So along this route, you're going to times. So you're going to do 3/10 times 5/9. If you needed another branch, you could add between them. But along the branches, you always multiply. So I'm going to do 3 times 5 to give me 15. And I've got 9 times 10 to give me 90. And if I wanted, I could cancel that down and I'd get a 6. But I'd still get the mark for 15 over 90 without needing to cancel it. Okay, so the final question on this paper, and I know I've gone pretty quickly. This should be recorded on YouTube and you can go back and listen to bits. But I suggest you try work through, if you've got your exam next week, a couple of papers, just step by step, pause it where you need to, and try do as much of it as possible. Okay, we've got the size of an interior angle of a regular polygon is 11 times the exterior. So what we mean by that is if I've got a regular polygon, it means all the sides are the same. I don't know how many sides I have, but I know that the inside is 11 lots of the outside. So if I call the outside x and the inside 11x, I can probably work out what x is, right? So I'm going to have 11x plus x, and I know it's on a straight line, so equals 180. So 12x equals 180. So x is 180 divided by 12. Now let's cancel that down. They're both even numbers, so we can half them. Remember, halving is super easy. Half of 18 is 9, add the 0. Half of 12 is 6. We could half it again. We get 45 over 3. And then we can divide by 3, which is 15. So 45 by 3. So we know x is 15. So we know the exterior angle equals 15 degrees. Now, the way we find out how many sides something has is we do 360 and we divide it by the exterior angle. So if I divide that by 15, what I get is 360 divided by 15. So 120 divided by 5, if I try divide both sides by 3. And hopefully 120 divided by 5, you could do that. 5 into 12 are 2, 2 left over, and you get 4. So it's 24 sides. And that's the answer there. I hope that was useful for somebody. What I'm going to do is do a higher paper, but if you give me 10 minutes, I'm going to close this off, I'm going to log off, and I'm going to log back in and do the higher paper. So we'll start the higher paper at 7:30 and not do the crossover questions. Following that, anyone doing AQA, I'll do an AQA foundation and an AQA higher. And if my voice is still here, we'll do the WJEC and the OCR papers as well. Right. Hope everyone has a good night.